Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and cricket balls that in the past I took 7 wickets for 23 runs with. Welcome to Who's Wrong on the Interwebs. This is a video that was signposted to me by one of my fine supporters who said this might be a candidate for Who's Wrong on the Interwebs. So let's have a look and see if this is a candidate for Who's Wrong on the Interwebs or whether I've been sent a bum stare. Let's see.
The mainstream narrative that cholesterol causes heart disease is controversial.
LDL and total cholesterol have absolutely nothing to do with the development of heart disease.
As long as you have high HDL, increasing LDL has very little risk?
Very little cardiac risk, and we see that over and over and over.
Cholesterol myth has been debunked a long time ago.
HDL cholesterol is not causal. High HDL cholesterol and low triglycerides are associated with lower risk of heart disease.
No, Peter Attia. You used that word risk again there, didn't you, son? No. There are no extant studies that are capable in any way, shape or form of informing me of my risk of anything. None at all.
Overwhelming majority of practicing clinicians in the world have no clue what ApoB is. They don't know what the metrics are for it. They don't know what the levels are for it. They wouldn't know how to treat it.
It doesn't need treating, you buff head. The level of ApoB in your system is under the control of your genes, those genes having survived 3,800 million years at least, those genes knowing exactly what they are doing, actually. No intervention from the medical profession is required.
My name is Dr. Gary McGowan. I'm a medical doctor with a certificate in lipidology.
Oh, well, this will be fun.
And today we're going to talk about cholesterol and heart disease.
Okie dokie, let's go, Dr. Gary McGowan. Are you sure you're a doctor? You look like you should be doing your homework. I'm glad that young people are involved in the medical profession, though, still. It's good.
Disease is the leading killer of humans worldwide.
Yes.
With almost 9 million deaths each year.
Yes, but why is that, Gary?
But it doesn't have to be this way.
That's also correct.
Because heart disease is preventable.
Yes.
In this video, we're going to clear this up.
Are you? I doubt that somehow. I think you're going to get this badly wrong. I get that vibe.
You are going to learn the truth about how...
Oh, the truth you say. The truth you say. Right, let's hear the truth, Gary.
Plaque develops, the history of statins and how they work, whether or not statins actually help or if they harm, what role your diet and lifestyle can play, how statins impact your muscles, and what blood tests to get to learn the truth about your heart health. Given that most...
What blood tests are going to tell you about your heart health, Gary? No, son.
Heart disease is the result of plaque building up. We need to ask ourselves, where does this plaque come from? The plaque comes from fats in the blood.
Nonsense, Gary. Absolute, complete, errant nonsense. False. No, they don't.
Specifically, cholesterol. This
rubbish. Absolute garbage. There is no science extant anywhere on this planet that can support that ridiculous notion. False.
Cholesterol is carried on low-density lipoproteins, better known as LDL. These LDL particles get retained within the wall of the...
Why does that happen, Gary? You're going to tell us about how atherosclerosis develops. You better tell us how that happens. Why do they get retained? Shall we wait for that? Let's give Gary a chance. Gary, tell us why they get retained.
The artery in a concentration-dependent manner.
No, that's false. Completely false again, Gary. It's nothing to do with the concentration. There are a whole series of conditions that must be in play before the retention of lipoprotein particles begins in the endothelium. Are you going to list those? I doubt it somehow.
This means is that the more LDL particles you have, the more plaque you will develop.
Absolute rubbish. Complete garbage, Gary. False.
And this is where statins come in.
Rubbish. That's not where statins come in at all.
Statins were first developed in the 1970s by Dr. Akira Endo. And you know where they came from? Citrus fruits, from the fungus Penicillium citrum, making them a natural discovery. So these statins were found...
Oh, shit. That's a stretch. Oh, good work, Gary. Love it.
in nature and then made available as medication.
Anything that exists in the universe is natural because it exists in the universe, you buffhead.
In 1987, and this marked a turning point in the field of cardiology.
Did it? Did it really? So statins were developed in the 1970s and immediately heart disease stopped after that, did it, Gary? That was the end of heart disease. No more heart disease for anybody because we have statins now. Is that what happened?
Since then, statins have evolved. They've been made more effective with...
More effective at what, Gary? Because statins, well, they have one proposed mechanism of action. It's actually not even the one that has the action that they are proposed to have. The actual activity of statins works through a completely different pathway that was serendipitous and not even thought of by Dr. Akira, whatever his name was, or anybody else since, it seems. Isn't that interesting? Stick around. You might learn some more from an actual scientist who actually understands cardiovascular pathophysiology. That's me, by the way, and not Gary here. And we'll be covering some of these things. It'll be fun. It'll be a rip snorter. You'll love it. Stick around.
fewer side effects and have saved millions of lives.
Statins have not saved a single life, ever. Not one. There is no evidence to support that ridiculous claim, Gary.
Worldwide. And this begs the question, how do they actually work?
Oh, hey, this will be fun. This will be hilarious, I'm sure.
Statins are HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors.
Yes. But that's not how they work.
This is an
That's just what they are.
enzyme responsible for the synthesis of cholesterol within you.
Whoa, 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 whoa. You missed a few steps out there, Gary. HMG coenzyme A reductase is the second reaction in a series of reactions that lead ultimately to the production of all sorts of things in your body, in fact, including cholesterol. However, if you look for cholesterol in the downstream of the pathway that comes, if you like, from the HMG coenzyme A reductase enzyme, you'll find it's about 3 or 4 pages down. So there's a whole bunch of other things that are affected by statins that are not even the target. Things like myelination, which is quite important if you don't want ALS, for example. Perhaps you should go and look up the 18,700% relative increase in the incidence of ALS in statin populations, Gary. That might be an interesting thing for you to go and educate yourself about, among other things.
Your cells. So when we inhibit this enzyme...
How about the production of coenzyme Q10, which is in the same pathway, isn't it, Gary? Is that a good idea, to knock down the activity of coenzyme Q10? Okay, good.
This leads to a reduction in cholesterol synthesis, the increase in the expression of LDL receptors, and this leads to clearance of these LDL particles from circulation.
Well, hang on just a minute. So what? They're not the cause of the heart disease in the first place, Gary. So reducing their concentration, contrary to the instructions of the genes, remember those genes that have survived 3,800 million years at least and know exactly what they're doing? Where's the indication for it? Perhaps you should go and look at the prospective cohort studies that will tell you, Gary, that in statin-taking populations, actually, the expected increase in longevity in those people is not one single day. So where's your indication for this marvelous, marvelous drug? The one that knocks down coenzyme Q10 and knocks down the ability to myelinate, among a plethora of other unwanted side effects, by knocking out an entire metabolic tree at its root, the second enzyme in. Cutting out every other branch of the tree on which all these sort of things sit. Testosterone is on the same tree as well, Gary, isn't it? So is estrogen, for examples. Could go on all day. but we need to get through this. So let's carry on.
There are also other mechanisms that, when put together, lead to the stability and regression of plaque within the blood vessels.
But you haven't even told us anything about how the plaque develops. You certainly haven't said anything accurate about how the plaque develops, what the underpinning etiology is. You've got that completely wrong because you've said it's caused by cholesterol, which it fucking isn't. So, Gary, I think you need to go back to school, son. Do your homework this time.
So, when someone has high LDL cholesterol, what actually happens?
LDL is not cholesterol, Gary. LDL is a lipoprotein carrier of lipids, including cholesterol, but not limited to cholesterol. A spade is a spade, Gary. LDL is not cholesterol.
Happens when they take a statin. Normally, we expect to see a reduction of about 40 to 50%, and given the close relationship between LDL cholesterol and the development of plaque within the blood vessel,
there is no such close relationship, Gary. Are you trained as a statistician? Can you sensibly talk about statistical inferences, statistical data sets in the way that I certainly can? No? Again? Okay.
we see a reduction in heart attacks that is proportional to this cholesterol lower.
Okay, proportional. What is the metric, Gary? Give us the statistical outcome. What is the inference on which you are basing this ridiculous notion that you've just put forward there? Shall we wait for that? Oh, it's not a metric, it's just your opinion. Okay, Gary, good. Well, the thing about opinions is they're just like assholes. Almost everybody's got one and it's full of shit.
Lowering. Specifically, for every 1 millimole reduction in LDL cholesterol, the risk of having a heart attack reduces by 22%.
There are no studies that can inform any given person anywhere in the world on their risk of any disease process whatsoever as that relates to any metabolic signal of any kind. Risk is a cause and effect statement necessarily. It implies a mechanism of action. The one that you've incorrectly posited, the one that you've said cholesterol causes atherosclerosis. Gary, it doesn't. Still, ice cream sales at Miami Beach are highly, highly predictably correlated with shark attacks at Miami Beach. Proportionately. Does that mean we deal with the shark attack scourge by outlawing the sale of ice creams at Miami Beach? Idiot.
Over 5 years. This translates to a longer life for those on statin therapy.
But it doesn't though, Gary. Look at the prospective cohort studies that tell you that statin populations have a survivability rate of not 1 day longer. Of a decade. Why is that? Well, it's because of all the, things like ALS, Gary. Hormonal problems caused by interfering with producing secondary sex hormones. The fact that it knocks down the immune system somewhat. Okay? Wakey, wakey, smell the bakey, go back to school, son, and get a balanced picture in your mind of what's going on here. Because at the moment, your commentary is destitute of competence. You're embarrassing yourself. What's next?
With a 10% risk reduction in all
No. There are no studies that can inform on risk still.
Causes of death per 1 millimole reduction. With that said, you would be a fool to think that medications are always 100% safe.
And you'd be a fool to listen to people like Gary McGowan here, because he does not know what he's talking about at all. This is not a valid, reliable source of good information. You should not listen to this individual, if I haven't made that clear already.
The reality is that all medications have side effects. This includes statins, and one of those of concern for many people is statin-related muscle pain. And while this is
yes, rhabdomyolysis, in fact, occurs quite commonly, and it's underreported, Gary. I wonder why that is. Safe and effective and safe, you know.
Real phenomenon, it's likely that it's been vastly overestimated.
No, underestimated is what the reality is, Gary. You really are a puppet, aren't you, of the allopathic, I guess, industrial complex. Wow. It's absolutely clear that you have no concept of reality, Gary, at all. Or science, or physiology, or anything that you would expect a duly qualified medical practitioner to have under control and to have an understanding of. This is absolutely fucking destitute, son. What's next?
Previously. Best evidence we have with up-to-date research suggests that up to 90% of cases of statin-related muscle pain are attributable to the nocebo effect. This.
Well, do you want to cite the study for us then? You said the most up-to-date research, the most reliable research. Great. Cite it. I can show you what's wrong with it. In fact, you're welcome, Gary, to come and have a debate with me face to face about this very topic. And we'll talk about science. You can bet your very young ass we will. And I will show you up with ease.
This is because when studies have given subjects...
Studies? What studies, Gary? Cite the studies.
Either a placebo or a statin, where both groups thought they were taking the statin, this same statin-related muscle pain was observed in the placebo group.
So, what does that prove? Nothing at all.
Suggesting that the majority of cases of these symptoms are not actually the result of the medication itself.
Okay, and what biomedical assessment was done on these people to determine whether or not there was some rhabdomyolytic activity going on, or to trace that activity if it was present? Maybe the perceived muscle pain might be to do with the lack of myelination. Myelin's made from cholesterol, isn't it, Gary? What's next?
Doesn't mean that there are no side effects.
Was this looked into, Gary, in that study? No, it was not. No. And you are an absolute embarrassment to yourself, your village, your family, and everybody listening to you right now. Your arrogance is beyond belief, frankly. Not impressed.
Effects. And individuals respond differently to medications. So for those who do have side effects, it's good to know that other cholesterol-lowering therapies are available. And
you do not need to lower your cholesterol. Cholesterol does not cause atherosclerosis, period. There is no intervention required. There is no medication required of any kind. Fibrates, PCSK9 inhibitors, bile acid sequestrants, or cholesterol absorption inhibitors. All contraindicated, Gary. All of them.
And this is something you should speak to your doctor about.
No, you shouldn't speak to your doctor about this. Your doctor has no fucking idea. 99% of doctors, I should say. 99 point something, probably. Puppets of the allopathic, medicinal, pharmacological, industrial complex. Starting from a standpoint of believing an intervention is required in terms of your cholesterol when it isn't. Gary, you've got nowhere close to an accurate description of the underpinning etiology of atherosclerosis. You made a throw-out statement early in your video that it's caused by cholesterol, which you supported with absolutely no science or research of any kind, because there fucking isn't any. It's an opinion. It's a bought and paid for opinion. And then you've just carried on for the rest of the video under the false assumption that your statement was correct in the first place. It wasn't, still.
Explore your options. But it's not all about medicine. Diet and lifestyle plays a really important role.
Oh, fuck me. He's going to get this wrong too, aren't you, Gary?
And we know that changing your diet can reduce your LDL cholesterol.
Well, you don't want to do that though, Gary, still.
Just not quite to the same extent. Here are the
rubbish. Dietary interventions have been shown recently, and I'm not going to cite it because why would I, that huge changes in LDL in a pretty much overnight fashion can be elicited if you do the right dietary intervention. However, that doesn't mean that's indicated, because it still isn't.
Most important changes to...
That's why I'm not citing it, because I don't want to bring any attention to it, Nick Norwitz, with your N=1 nonsense, your contraindicated nonsense.
make to your diet to reduce your LDL cholesterol?
You don't want to reduce your cholesterol still.
Firstly, try to reduce your saturated fat intake.
Absolute fucking rubbish, Gary. Absolute garbage. Human beings have evolved, gaining the vast majority of our effective so-called energy from saturated and, well, largely saturated animal fats. Fact. Those are the genes selected for. Those are our organ systems that have been selected for. We are absolutely designed by natural selection to gain the vast majority of our effective so-called energy from animal fats, which are largely saturated. So false again.
And increase your intake of unsaturated fats.
Rubbish. They are pro-inflammatory, it seems. They are not what we've evolved on. They are much more susceptible to oxidative damage. They do become included in cell membranes which should have saturated fatty acid anions in them. That does cause a problem, it seems. They do have a very, very long half-life in such situations. Just absolute rubbish, Gary. And you are not a nutritionist any more than you understand the etiology, the cardiovascular pathophysiology that you're talking about here, because you've got nowhere near it at all. And now you're just spouting off industry-funded, industry-approved falsehoods. It's disgraceful.
Many people say that saturated fat, often in the form of animal fats, are actually good for us and that we should eat more of them. But this is
And they're right.
misguided.
No, it isn't. You are misguided, Gary, vastly misguided, and your arrogance is beyond belief, son. Wow.
Because what we see in the research
No, we don't, Gary, before you even start.
is that those who consume more saturated fat tend to have higher levels of LDL cholesterol.
So what? That would be exactly what we would expect, you stupid boy. Of course they do, because the fat needs to be carried in the blood by a carrier, and that is LDL. So the genes react by producing more of it, precisely to facilitate that transport. For goodness sake.
And as a result, a higher rate of cardiovascular events.
No. Result is a cause and effect statement, and LDL, so-called cholesterol, which isn't, neither cholesterol itself is causal in atherosclerosis heart disease, Gary, still.
This is because when people are fed a lot of saturated fat, the expression of LDL receptors is reduced. And
Yes.
if we have less receptors, we're going to have more of those LDL particles in circulation. It's
Yes. That's part of what's called homeostasis, Gary. I think you should go and look it up. It makes perfect sense when you understand what homeostasis is and the goal of it.
also really important to reduce your consumption of processed junk foods like sweets, crisps, chocolate, and fast food. This
Yes.
isn't just about specific ingredients like the types of fats, the sugars, or refined starches,
Well, it really is, in fact, actually, Gary.
also about the effect of a diet rich in these foods, which can cause obesity and poor metabolic health, both of which contribute to your risk of heart disease.
No. That word again. No. There are no studies that can inform any given individual on their risk of anything still.
Eating more fruits, vegetables, and sources of fiber is also
Okay, so fruits and vegetables, the exact requirement dietarily in human beings for any fruit or vegetables of any kind ever is not 1 single gram of that material per day. None ever. You do not require any of that. And fiber, if anything, seems to be contraindicated. Gary, go and have a look at Dr. Paul Mason's video on this topic, where he talks about the one and only one pseudo-clinical study that's ever been done on folks who presented N equals 62 with idiopathic constipation. And see what happened in that study. It will really surprise you, I think, Gary, because it seems like you really haven't done your homework. After all, son.
a powerful way to reduce heart disease risk, both
Rubbish. Once again, there are no studies that can inform any given individual on their risk of anything as that relates to anything whatsoever. Still.
through cholesterol lowering
No, not through cholesterol lowering, because cholesterol does not cause heart disease still, period. Wrong again.
and other health promoting effects of these foods.
Like what? What health promoting effects are there from contraindicated fruits, vegetables, and fiber, Gary. Shall we wait for that? Okay, what's next?
Finally, you can also consider adding some functional foods to your diet.
Oh, functional foods. That sounds like a buzz term to me. Functional foods. What the hell is that?
Such as plant sterols, as these have also been
Absolute rubbish. Garbage, Gary. Plant sterols.
shown in the latest science to
The latest science, you say? Well, cite it, Gary.
reduce.
That's not citing science. That's splashing up the front page, well, the title, really, not even the front page, the title of several studies which purport to support plant sterols. Do they actually, in fact? How about you and I have a debate about it, Gary? You're welcome on my channel. I'll even be polite to you to your face. But I will deal with your ridiculous, arrant nonsense very, very firmly. You're completely out of your lane here, sunshine.
Your LDL cholesterol. It's
This
very
doesn't need intervention.
clear that diet is important, but
It's very clear that diet is important to our health, yes, but the exactitudes of that are not so clear, Gary, because nutrition science, human nutrition science, is an area of ring-fenced ideology. It's not a science. It's not even akin to science. It's a bought and paid for area of theology.
the higher your LDL cholesterol is, the more likely it is that you may require medication. So
Rubbish. You do not require medication to intervene on your LDL or your cholesterol, not ever.
don't be afraid to take that step if you need to. But how do you know if you need to in the first place? Well,
You don't. Nobody needs to. Easy.
you have to start by getting your bloods tested. Blood
No, you don't have to do anything of the sort. What you have to do is trust that your genes know exactly what they're doing. And you need to understand that they've been doing that, those genes, since the beginning of time, really. And that doctors like this boy here have been around for, what, are you 30? 35 maybe? I don't know. An indoctrinated, brainwashed puppet like this boy here. Absolutely, if you want to go and listen to it doesn't matter what age the doctor is or what gender or anything else. If you want to go and listen to one of these allopathic physicians about heart disease, it's your funeral. Probably quite literally. Because they will lead you up the garden path. They are mandated to. They're required to. They are not allowed to give you an opinion which is contrary to the accepted narrative. You need to know that.
lipid test can
They will lose their jobs. They will be struck off the medical register if they tell you the truth.
be confusing, even for doctors.
What do you mean, even for doctors? You're painting yourself out as a doctor as someone who knows something about this? It's quite clear, Gary, that you don't. Remember, you were going to tell us all about the etiology of heart disease, and you've got nowhere near it. Absolutely nowhere fucking close. You made an incorrect statement at the beginning of your video about the cause of heart disease and left it at that, without supporting it with a single fucking thing. Still.
So here, I want to break down the most important tests to consider and what they actually mean. Your
Here we go.
total cholesterol is
Is completely irrelevant. It is what it is. It's under the control of your genes. Those genes know what they're doing.
typically what you see first on a blood lipid report. And this gives a gross assessment of the cholesterol carried on various lipoproteins. If
It really doesn't, in fact.
it's high, this is useful information, but it doesn't tell us the whole story. The next thing we see is high density lipoprotein, or HDL cholesterol. This is
It's not cholesterol either, Gary. HDL is a lipoprotein carrier of cholesterol.
typically referred to as good cholesterol.
Well, there's no such thing. If you're thinking that there's also such a thing as bad. All cholesterol is good. It's good because it exists. It exists because it is encoded for in the genes of many, many animals. It's included in their flesh, including humans who make their own if you don't eat any, by the way, Gary. Remember, it comes from that tree that the HMG coenzyme A reductase inhibitors knock out. It's there for a purpose. The genes put it there because the genes want it there because they know it needs to be there. And they control the level at which it's expressed for the same reasons, you arrogant little boy.
And this is because a generally healthy lifestyle is associated with higher HDL cholesterol.
Right, so healthy user bias then. So what?
While it's not quite as simple as increased HDL cholesterol equals reduced cardiovascular risk,
There are no studies that inform on risk still.
it is generally a positive indicator of health. You'll also see triglycerides measured on your blood tests. And
Also an irrelevancy in respect to heart disease, pretty much, at least in terms of as a causal link.
high triglycerides can also be harmful for heart disease risk,
No, so again with the risk statement there, Gary, wrong again, false.
especially when coupled with low HDL cholesterol and high LDL cholesterol. And this profile, referred to as atherogenic dyslipidemia,
See, that's just a label imposed by an allopathic community. Because atherosclerosis is not a lipid disorder, Gary. The whole label is fundamentally false from its very construction. Atherogenic, no, because lipids don't cause atherosclerosis. Dyslipidemia, meaning there's something wrong with our genes in some way? No. Sure, there are one or two people out there, well, more than one or two, but you know what I mean. A very small proportion of people who have faulty genes, absolutely. I'm talking to a generalized audience.
is often seen in those with metabolic disease, such as type 2 diabetes.
So association. Where's the causal link, Gary? Where's the evidence for any causal link whatsoever? It does not exist because, well, I've covered the reasons why atheroscleroses develop, Gary, in several videos on my channel already. I suggest you go and watch those and learn something. Because it's absolutely clear, patent, and inescapable once you've watched those videos. You will have to apologize publicly for your arrogance and your ignorance hitherto and state quite clearly and correctly that atheroscleroses are not caused by any of the lipids at all. No, they aren't.
Then we get to LDL cholesterol.
Which isn't cholesterol still. It's a lipoprotein carrier of cholesterol and other lipids, as it turns out.
Tells us the amount of cholesterol carried on LDL.
No, it doesn't. It's an estimate, in fact, Gary. You don't even understand what the tests are that are being done by these laboratories that report back to you, do you? No, they don't measure anything of the sort. It is an estimate. Okay? You really do need to go and do your homework, very seriously.
Lipoproteins, but this is not always present on a blood test. Sometimes all you'll see is non-HDL cholesterol. And this,
which is also an estimate,
brings us to an important point. That when we look at these blood tests, such as LDL cholesterol, we're getting a gross assessment of the cholesterol that's on those types of proteins in your blood. But
no, we're not, in fact, at all getting anything of the sort. False again.
What's actually more important, if you have it available, is a test called ApoB.
No, rubbish, Gary. Absolute fucking nonsense. Complete garbage. ApoB is a protein associated with some of the lipoprotein carriers. And it too is there because it is encoded for by a length of DNA that survived 3,800 million years at least. It has a role to play and it plays that role. It does not cause heart disease any more than does HDL, LDL, any density of lipoproteins, any of the subfraction of the lipoproteins, including any of the specific apolipoproteins like apolipoprotein B. All right? Still.
B stands for apolipoprotein B, and this can be found on LDL particles, but also other non-LDL particles that can still contribute to the development of plaque. And therefore, when we...
But they don't, Gary. Still.
We measure the number of ApoB particles in circulation, we get a better idea of the total number of plaque-causing particles.
No, plaque-causing, you say. Plaque-causing particles. No, that is false, Gary. Fundamentally false, absolutely false, demonstrably false. They do no such thing, still.
That are in our blood. And finally, there's also a specialized blood test called Lp(a). This stands for lipoprotein A, and high levels of Lp(a) increase risk of
No. Let's all say it together. There are no studies that can inform any given individual on their risk of anything whatsoever. Still, Gary, no.
Vascular disease dramatically.
No, false. Perhaps you'd like to come and debate that science with me too, because I'm also a trained statistician as well as a cardiovascular pathophysiologist, Gary. You're neither of those things, are you?
Importantly, this is almost entirely genetically determined, and to date,
So are the levels of everything else, you buffhead.
there aren't great therapies to reduce it, but knowing your levels can give you an indication as to what your overall cardiovascular disease risk is.
No, it cannot. False.
Because this is largely genetically determined and isn't really influenced by lifestyle or medication at the moment, this Lp(a) test is best carried out at one point in your life and needn't be followed up over
That needn't be carried out at all. There is no information of utility that can be derived. There is no therapeutic intervention required anyway, and there isn't one available even if there was. So why would you even bother with the test?
time, until, of course, we have medications to reduce it. If you want to learn
We don't need medications to reduce it. Contraindicated, Gary.
more about constructing a diet to optimize your health,
Well, we've already seen some of your views on diet, Sunshine, and they're false. Demonstrably false, absolutely false without any question whatsoever. Your arrogance is beyond belief, Sunshine. You are completely out of your lane talking about diet. You are not trained in nutrition. I am, as well as cardiovascular pathophysiology and statistics. The physiology of rest and exercise is my other advanced research degree. I have 3 of them, Gary. By the way.
check out this next video.
Yeah, no, we won't be doing that. Okay, well, thank you, Gary, for really showing how vastly destitute you are. Thanks for showing how absolutely arrogant you are and ignorant you are as to the etiology of heart disease, atherosclerosis. And thank you for showing us everything that's wrong with society in recent generations, son. Actually, basically, my suggestion to you, son, is pull your fucking head in, go back to school, and fucking learn some actual science. Because at the moment, you're off half-cocked, giving people dangerous, contraindicated advice that, if anything, is likely to shorten their lifespans and their quality of life in the meantime. It's disgraceful and it should stop, as should you. You need to shut down your channel and not make another single video about cardiovascular pathophysiology ever again, Sunshine. In the meantime, you're welcome to email me for an appointment to do a live debate with myself about all of the stuff that you've been talking about in this video, where we will actually look at the science. And I will point to the flaws and foibles, and I'll make a fool of you. You're welcome to that if you'd like to. If not, well, stiff shit. That's how it is. Thank you for joining me once again, boys and girls. I hope you've enjoyed this educational session dealing with Gary and his ridiculous notions. Join me next time where someone else will be wrong on the interwebs, because it doesn't look like slowing down, does it? No. See you then.